So we're on this series called How to Be Rich, and it's because we live in a society that really tries to communicate to us that we need to get rich. You know, they're telling us how to get rich on one hand, and then they're also telling us how to get unrich. You know, because they're telling us how to spend all the money that we're supposed to be getting because we're pursuing the things they're telling us to pursue. And so in any given day, you're viewing the internet, you're on your Gmail account or Facebook or whatever, and on the sidebar right off there to the side, there's like 5 things, and 2 of them are trying to tell you how to get more money, and 2 of them are trying to tell you how to get rid of your money. It's just, that's the way our world is. It's trying to tell us to either get it or to get rid of it. And no one's telling us how to just be rich. If you ever reach the level of rich, how will you know you're there? And then once you are there, what do you do about it? Do you worry about trying to stay there, or what's the deal? So this series is about how to be rich, because in the Bible, there's a very clear command that Paul gives to Timothy to tell to rich people. And Paul says to Timothy, you've got rich people in your church. They need to hear this message. Tell the rich people this. Our problem is none of us feel rich. We don't feel rich. I looked at some statistics last week. I showed you some of them. And in general, in America, people don't feel rich until they make twice as much as they make now. But by the time they make that twice as much, they don't feel rich anymore because they've expanded their lifestyle to reach the level of their income and surpass it even. And we talked last week about we don't feel rich, and that's why we try to get rich. And because the reason we don't feel rich is that we have created a negative margin in our lives. What we do is our income is here, and we allow our obligations to reach here, but we want our lifestyle to reach here. So we make lifestyle decisions, and once we make the lifestyle decisions, that becomes a new obligation, which raises our obligations. And eventually, our desire for the basic obligations that we've committed ourselves to, and then the stretching of our lifestyle and reaching every now and then into the world of luxury to pull that back down, stretches this far faster than this comes up. And eventually we get this place where we feel the need for this, even though we only have this. And when that happens, we don't feel rich. Because we've got this negative margin. Our obligations are beyond what our income is, and we don't feel rich. But Paul gave Timothy this really interesting statement. Last week we looked at it, where Paul says, godliness with contentment is great gain. And we learned that there's this attitude we can have towards life where we feel rich, we feel gain, and all it requires is for us to find godliness and contentment. And so I asked the question last week, how high does this need to be in order for you to reach godliness and contentment? And my claim was, if it were possible for us to have our godliness and contentment line right here and our income line right here, that margin would make us feel rich. So my claim last week is that any one of us in this room can feel rich. You don't have to be making twice your net income. All you need to do is reduce your contentment a little bit, and you can reach that place of feeling rich. Now, we don't believe that because we don't accept contentment as a solution. We think money is the solution, and if I have enough money, then I will feel content with the lifestyle that's just one step beyond my current lifestyle. That's not content. Instead, if we get to the place of contentment, we will begin to feel rich. So last week I made it all encouraging. It was all positive. At some point in the next couple of days, I'll get it posted online, and so then you can go online and listen to it and stuff like that if you missed last week. But last week it was all encouraging and friendly. You know, you can feel rich. Today, not so much. Because today, I'm going to push your buttons a little bit. Today, I'm going further. I'm claiming not that you can feel rich, but that you should feel rich. Because you are rich. Now, I could do a lot of statistical analysis. I'm going to show you a couple things talking about how our wealth compares to the rest of the world. And that's one thing, okay? But many of us are here in this room, and because you don't feel rich, you don't think it's okay for you to say or acknowledge that you are rich. Even though there might be some people in this room who literally have twice the net income or twice the net worth as someone else in the room, none of us feel rich. So why is that the case? We're all messed up equally. We can just accept that. What we're going to talk about today is that you should feel rich, and I want to show you some statistics. Now, most of these things came from Wikipedia because this last week I went on a Wikipedia run on all things financial I could find, just because I thought it would be interesting, and it was. Check this out. The average home in the United States has more than 700 square feet per person. Now, let me ask you, is your home that way? Okay, think about it for a minute. Think about your home square footage. Think about how many people live there. If you have 2 people and you have 1,400 square feet, then that's the average. If you have 1 person, you have 700 square feet, that's the average. Just think about it. The average home in the United States is more than 700 square feet per person, which is 50% to 100% more than in other high-income countries. And we're not talking about the middle-of-the-road countries. We're not talking about the low-income countries. We're talking about the high-income countries. Your house, on average, is twice the size of theirs. Likewise, even in the lowest percentiles, that means in America, the people with the lowest amount of money in America, ownership rates of gadgets and amenities are exceptionally high compared to other countries. Do you realize, maybe you don't, but do you realize that here in America, we have nonprofit organizations like churches, religious groups that have big screen televisions? It's astounding to me. Gadgets are everywhere. We take our drums and put them in a cage so you can't hear them. And then we put microphones on them and use electrical reinforcement so that you can hear them again. It's like, what are we doing? We live in a crazy world where we take all kinds of money and resources and we pile them on top of things so that we can have experiences that we think are cool. And we, in this society, you might think that other countries have more addiction to gadgets, but statistically, the lowest percentiles of American people are more gadget-filled and amenity-filled than other countries. I know a pastor who's got like a Mac, an iPad, an iPod, and a phone, and he's using them all right now. We are so gadgeted up. Now, let me show you a couple other charts. I'm using my iPod. So 2011 average take-home pay. This is countries in 2011, the average take-home pay. That means after taxes, after compulsory things like your health insurance plan or whatever else your company has taken out of your paycheck, what you go home with in paycheck, average across the entire country is $42,000 of disposable income average take-home pay. And the United States is ranked number 1. Of all countries, number 1. We take more money home from our jobs than they do in South Korea, the Netherlands, in the United Kingdom, in Canada. The United States is number 1. Now, I don't know about you. Maybe $42,000 is a little high for you, and when you think about your take-home pay. The median household income in the United States, median household, that means you take all the households in the United States and you list them from the most money to the least money, and you grab the middle one. That's the median. When you grab the middle one, the median household income in the United States is about $50,000 this year. So $50,000, you can think in terms of that's the middle of the road in terms of all wage earners, all households in this country, okay? So what if we measured our median income against other countries' median incomes? And we also take out all the taxes and get down to disposable income again. This is that in 2004 dollars. We had some, the Wikipedia article was talking about how there was some interesting statistics that in order to make this work right, they measured everything according to 2004 dollars, okay? And then for us, I converted a few of them into 2012 dollars just so you can see what it is. But the median disposable income for the United States is higher than every other country. And you notice the countries below us are in a different order than the previous chart. So if you take average, we're the highest. If you take median, we're the highest. It doesn't matter how you measure this thing, the United States is the wealthiest country when it comes to families, households, individuals. We get more money flowing through our fingers than anyone else on the planet. I think that means we're rich. We at least live in a very rich country. And maybe you feel like, well, I'm not part of that rich group. You know, I'm not part of them. I'm not part of that category. But do you realize if you make over $50,000 a year, you're in the top half of this country? If your household has more than $50,000, you're in the top half of this country. And then it really shifts fast. At $100,000, we're talking about the top 15% of the people in this country. If your whole household were to bring in $100,000, that's top 15. If you're near $100,000, that's like top 15% in the country. And then there may be a few people in this room who are above that. And that goes up really fast. By the time you reach 200, that's 3% of the country. And 250, it's like $300,000 is like top 1% in the whole country. But listen, you might look at those numbers and you say, I'm nowhere near $300,000 every year. I'm nowhere near that. That's fine. You can be nowhere near that. You're still way higher than the rest of the world. Well, in the United States, we've got a high cost of living. Well, not as much as Switzerland. Have you seen real estate prices in Switzerland? No, I don't know either. I'm just bringing that up. I just thought that might, if anyone knows here, let me know, because I'm assuming they're higher than here, and I'm just throwing that out because I think it might be the case, but I don't really know. Anyway, I just know we make more money. Okay, so here's one more thing. One more quote that I found. You guys, you've heard of this guy named Bono, right? He's the lead singer for U2, and he's very much of an activist against global poverty. And of course, he's rich. I mean, he's rich. You're not rich, but he's rich. He's got tons of money. And more money than you could possibly imagine. And he was asked at one point how it is that he can do all this work with poverty globally. You know, because when he's working with these people who are so poor, do they have any awareness of how much money he's bringing to the table? You know, do they have any awareness that his personal net worth is higher than the gross national product of some small countries? Do they know that? You know, can they relate to that? And so a journalist was asking him this question once. Can the people you work with, do they even have any concept of how wealthy you are? You know, because I think the journalist was trying to draw this distinction between how rich Bono was, and yet he's an activist for these poverty-stricken people. And Bono's answer was really interesting. Check this out. You have to understand, Bono replied to the journalist, that in these people's eyes, there's no difference between you and me. You haven't seen my salary, the interviewer responded with a laugh. It doesn't matter, said Bono. You have a roof over your head, 3 squares a day, clean drinking water, a doctor who sees you when you're sick. In the eyes of these people, you have everything. In the eyes of these people, you have everything. See, we in this country think about the super rich. And we say the super rich, I'm nowhere near the super rich, so therefore I'm not rich. When as a matter of fact, the rest of the world would disagree with you. The rest of the world would say, oh no, you're rich. Like, if we took one of the tallest guys in this church, whether it's Too Tall Troy over here or Mike over here, if we took one of the tallest guys in the church and put them next to me, you would clearly see they are taller than I am by a ton, by a lot. Every time I'm standing near one of those two guys, I'm like always like this. So I know I'm nowhere near tall as those guys. And so I might think to myself, I'm just not very tall. But let's imagine that one of you has an infant in this room right at my feet. Who's taller in the infant's perspective, me or Troy? Doesn't matter. He doesn't know. He looks up and all he sees, his head's way up there. And that's the illustration Bono was trying to make, that the rest of the world is so far below us that they see us all in the same category, the super rich. So here's my question to you. Are you willing to admit it? Are you willing to accept the responsibility that comes on you from the phrase, I am rich? Because you know you don't feel rich. I don't feel rich. And the only reason, if I am rich but I don't feel rich, it must mean that I'm doing something wrong. It must mean that I've let my obligation tower get a little too tall, because if I am rich and I don't feel rich, it's my fault. Willing to admit it. About a year ago, I was doing a financial message, and 2 years ago, I was ruminating on this concept from Andy Stanley. I told you about, I listened to his messages on this kind of concept before. And so 2 years ago, I was thinking through this myself, and I let it simmer with me for about a year. And then last year, I did a message on some financial stuff. And I remember during that week, my daughter asked me this question, because I was talking about finances and wealth and things like that. And she asked me, Daddy, are we rich? And I thought, oh my, what am I going to say here? Because if I say yes, now she's going to go back to her friends at school. She's like, my daddy's a pastor and we're rich. And I felt like that. I was worried, what are people going to think about me and about my family situation? And my wife has a good job, and in the eyes of the whole world, we are very, very rich. And I didn't want to say that to my daughter. I didn't want to say, yeah, we're rich, because you know what? She's going to go tell people. And then I thought, well, is that so bad? Because we are. So here's our first step. Our first hurdle is we have to admit this. And I know it's uncomfortable for you, it's uncomfortable for me, but I want us to say it together today. Out loud, we're going to say, I'm rich. Because you are, even if you don't feel it. And we're going to get to that place one of these days where we begin to get our contentment line in the proper place with regard to our income line. And then we're going to feel rich. But even if you're not there, we're at least going to admit it. We're going to just acknowledge the fact that we are. I know some of you are on student loans. Some of you are like nearly unemployed because you just went through a really hard time in your life. But even on unemployment, we still have a society where people have roofs and people have food. I mean, seriously. There are some extreme cases, but you in this room are not one of them. We're rich. So can we admit it? We're going to count to 3, and then we're going to say all together, I'm rich. Right? Can you do it? Okay, 1, 2, 3. I'm rich. And some of you are like, no, I'm not. You're like, when you said those words, some of you in the room are like, I'm just saying it because he told me to say it. Some of you in the room, you had this twist happening in your heart. And you're thinking, well, no, I'm really, really not. And you had that peace in your heart that just was kind of all tightened up, and you're like, I don't really want to admit that. But you just did. Ha. Too late. You just said it. Can't go back now. And so because we admitted it, because you said it, because we're there, now we look at 1 Timothy 6:17. And when Paul says, command those who are rich in this world, he's talking to you and he's talking to me. Because in this world, yes, we are. And so we're going to just deal with this. Here's the verse on the screen. Paul says, command those who are rich in this present world not to be arrogant, nor to put their hope in wealth, which is so uncertain, but to put their hope in God, who richly provides us with everything for our enjoyment. This verse is such an important verse for rich people that we are going to just dig into it a little bit. Paul gives 2 commands in this verse. 2 commands, and the first command is very simple, very clear. He says, don't be arrogant. Command those who are rich in this world not to be arrogant. Don't be arrogant. That's the first command. Now, it's easy for us to look at this, and we recognize that when it comes to money, arrogance follows closely. And we find it very easy to point our finger at other people and say that they're both rich and arrogant. It's easy for us to do that. I'll just give you an example. Maybe you've been in this place, maybe you haven't. But most of us in this room have at some point in our life asked someone for money. You know, you left your wallet at home and you're out to dinner with a friend and you realize you don't have any money with you, and so you have to ask for some money. Or maybe it's something bigger, like you had a big expense that you didn't really expect to come up, and now you can't pay the electric bill, and so you need to call someone and borrow just $50. Not a whole lot, just $50. That'll cover you. Maybe you've been in that place recently, maybe it's a long time ago, but just get yourself back into that mindset. What do? You spend hours, maybe days, maybe weeks, wrestling in your heart. Do I really need to borrow from someone? And you're feeling ashamed, and you're feeling down, and you're feeling broken about this thing, and you're saying, do I really need to ask for money from someone? And finally you get to that place where you've made the decision. You say, yes, I have to ask. I have to ask someone for something. And so then you look around the room and you think about the people in your life, and you ask yourself this next question: who do I know who cares about me enough and who has enough resources that it's not going to hurt them? Because see, I don't want to hurt my friends. So I'm going to think about the person who has the most that they can afford to offer to me. You know, I'm not going to ask $50 from my friend who just lost his job, but there's this other dude that I know, and he's set, he's stable, he's secure, and everything is going well for him. I'm going to ask him for the $50. And so now we've finally decided, of all the people you know, there's one person who has the resources, and it's not going to hurt them too much. And so you muster up the courage. I have to ask. This is the right person to ask. You call him up and you say, hey, I'm down on my luck. I need just a little bit of help. Can I borrow $50? And that person says no. And then you walk away from that conversation, and in your heart, you know what you're saying? You're saying, who does he think he is? Are you going to afford it? He's got that big house. He's just bought the new car. He's got everything going for him. He can afford 50. Who does he think he is? He doesn't deserve the $50 more than me. You know, it's easy for us to point our finger at that other person and say, that person is arrogant. Who do they think they are? But you're the one pointing the finger. And you're like, wait a minute, I deserve that as much or more than that person. And now we realize something, that we have connected dollar signs with our sense of worth. In fact, what we do is this. We say, because I have money, I know I'm worth something. In fact, we go further than that. We say, I have money because I'm worth something. In fact, we go further than that. We say, I have money, but I'm worth even more. Because whatever my net worth is, I know my personal worth is above that. And it's noble. I mean, because we realize human life is worth far more than mere money, right? It's noble. It starts out that way. God created me. I am a creation of God. My value, my worth is higher than money. Money doesn't buy a person. We know that. But then we shift it, and it gets all messed up and twisted with dollar signs and numbers. And then all of a sudden, it's like this. Even if my net worth is here, I know I'm worth this, and I'll prove it to you. If your boss came into your office, cubicle, or wherever you work, and said these words to you, I'm going to give you a raise, would you ever say, no thanks, the company's already paying me what I'm worth? No, you've never said that. You know, what you say is, finally, it's about time they realized how much I'm worth to the company. It's about time. I'm worth more than what they're giving me. And so they come in to offer you a raise, and you're like, that's right. I'm worth more than what you were giving me. Now you're giving me a raise, and you recognize how much I'm worth to this company. And that rides with you for about a week. And then once you get your first paycheck with that extra number in it, and then you realize someone else in the business is going to get a raise, you say, well, wait a minute. Don't they know how much I'm worth to this company? Because however much we get, we think we're worth more. That's our arrogance. However much I have, I think I'm worth more. And that's why we get into this problem. Because, see, we create this negative gap in our lives where we say this about ourselves: I have this, I'm worth this, I deserve this. Therefore, if you ask me for something, I can't give you anything because this doesn't reach up to here. And so I can't give you from my this because it's not even where it is. And let's talk later when I feel like my money, has reached the level of where I feel like I'm worth. But the problem is it never gets that high because I'm arrogant. And my worth is always going to be higher than however much money I have. I'm always going to perceive myself as more important. And that's an okay thing if I keep the two things completely separate. But if I begin to mesh them together and say, somehow I have this, but I'm worth this, now it's just messed up. That's why Paul says, don't be arrogant. And you know what? You don't even have money because of you. Every dollar you have is not because of you. You might say, well, wait a minute. I have the money that I have because I have the brain that I have. I'm smart, and I've made wise choices, and I've taken some risks, and I've moved into places that other people wouldn't be willing to move into, and I've gone there, and it's been successful for me. It's worked for me. I've earned every dollar. I've worked hard for every dollar. I've made myself the person that I am. I've gotten to this place. I think I should be farther, but I've gotten to this place. And you know what? Who gave you your brain? Who gave you your family? Who gave you your opportunities? Who brought success when you took a risk? And who gave you the ability to work as hard as you work? See, it's all from God. All of our wealth is a blessing. That's why in this verse, Paul says to trust in God, to put their hope in God, because God richly provides. See, that's the point. We can't be arrogant because it's not about me anyway. It's all from God. And so our first problem is we don't admit we're rich. Our second problem is that we think if we have any money, it's because of me. And we're going to counter that with a commitment phrase today. And the commitment phrase is this: I am rich because God has blessed me. I am rich because God has blessed me. Would you say that one with me? 1, 2, 3. I am rich because God has blessed me. Again, I am rich because God has blessed me. God has blessed us. It comes from Him. So that's the first command. Paul says, don't be arrogant. And we need to move away from that by affirming that it's because of God that we have whatever we have. The second command is don't put your hope in wealth. Don't put your hope in wealth. If you're taking notes, that's your next blank. Don't put your hope in wealth. And this is another one of those things that we don't want to admit. But here's the truth. Money can provide for me two things immediately. Two things are immediately accessible if I have money for it. One is power. Let me give you an example. I don't know how to fix my car, but if I have enough money, my car gets fixed. I don't know how to fix the plumbing in my house, but if I have enough money, my plumbing gets fixed. I don't know all the things that I need to know to get a certain degree, but if I have enough money, those things get learned. See, if I have enough money, I can do things that I can't do by myself ordinarily. Money gives me the power to acquire, to accomplish, to do. And so money gives me power. And I can get that right now. I can solve whatever problem I have in my life right now if I have enough money. If I get sick, if I have enough money, I can go to the right doctor in the right place at the right time to get the right medication and the right treatment so that even if it doesn't cure me, my life is at least better for as long as I have. If I have money, I have power. I can also get pleasure. Money gives me instant access to any number of pleasures in my life. So both power and pleasure, these are two things that I have immediate access to. If I'm feeling down or sad, but I have enough money, I can get some pleasure. See, I know money can't buy happiness, but it can sure buy pleasure, and sometimes that's good enough. So, if you think about it though, both power and pleasure, there's something deeper underneath it. See, underneath it is the question, if this happens, but I have enough money, I'll be okay. See, the deeper question is security. The deeper question is, do I trust money? Now, Paul says don't put your hope in money because it's so uncertain. We know it's uncertain. That's why we want more. We know it's uncertain. That's why we need double. Because money is so uncertain. What I have isn't going to be enough. I need more, and that's the problem. See, we're putting our hope in our wealth because we think wealth gives us the security that we need to accomplish all these other things. And Paul says, wait a minute. It's the money itself that's so uncertain. It's not the amount of money that's uncertain. It's money itself that's uncertain. And why can he say that? Because of something Jesus said a whole long time before Paul. Jesus said, do not store up treasures for yourselves on earth where moth and rust destroy, but store up treasures for yourself in heaven where thieves cannot break in and steal and where moth cannot destroy. For where your treasure is, there your heart will be also. Jesus would say, don't worry about what you're going to eat or drink because the Father in heaven knows what you need before you even ask for it. Jesus would say, you can't serve both God and money because you're going to love one and hate the other. See, here's the thing. Jesus knew it, Paul knew it, and you and I know it when we admit it, but not all the time. We want money to do what only God can do. Only God can give me security. Only God can give me the power, the pleasure that I need. And this is amazing because, see, if you look at the verse, it says God richly provides. Whatever I need, God can provide it. Whatever I want, God can provide it. He richly provides us with everything. God can provide it. And then beyond that, He provides it for our enjoyment. What God provides, we can enjoy. If He gives it to me, I should enjoy it. And that's our next thing. Go ahead and jot this down. God provides for my enjoyment. For my enjoyment. This is amazing to me. We worry about so many things, and yet we look in the Bible and we're conflicted. We're confronted regularly with this principle that God is the one who provides for us, and He does it for our enjoyment. What an amazing thought. And yet we don't accept it and believe it like we should. So let's make another commitment phrase. Our first problem is we don't want to admit that we're rich, but we really are. Our second problem is if we have riches of any sort, we think it's because of us, but it's really not. It's because of God. And our third problem is that we think riches are the things that are going to give us the security in this world, but it's really not. God's the only one who can do that. And so this is our first commitment, I'm rich. Then our second commitment, I'm rich because God has blessed me. And so our third commitment is this, I will not trust in my riches, but in the one who richly provides. I will not trust in my riches, but in the one who richly provides. Let's say that together. I will not trust in my riches, but in the one who richly provides. One more time. I will not trust in my riches, but in the one who richly provides. I'm rich because God has blessed me, and I will not trust in my riches, but in the one who richly provides. Now, I'm not here saying that you need to give up your bank account and your savings account and your 401k as if that's somehow trusting in money to provide you security. No, savings and insurance and all those things, those are tools that the society has provided for us just to be smart, just to be wise. But I'm going to ask you some questions, some evaluative questions, so that we can take this home. The questions to get us thinking about, am I trusting in money or am I trusting in God? So here's some questions to think about. You might want to jot these down. You might just want to let them soak into you, but here's some questions. Am I trusting in wealth? Am I trusting in wealth? If you have a decision that you're making, ask yourself before you make that decision, there's a job opportunity, and the job comes with more responsibility and more money, but maybe you should ask yourself the question, am I trusting in wealth? There's a thing that you're going to try to buy or invest in, and so the question is, am I trusting in wealth? Maybe the next question, do I want this for power, pleasure, or security? Do I want this raise? Do I want this thing? Do I want this money for power, pleasure, or security? Another question, am I asking money to do what only God can do? Or one last question, am I now thankfully enjoying what God has provided? The passage tells us God has richly provided everything for my enjoyment. And sometimes the fact that I'm not enjoying what God has given is the reason I'm pursuing what God hasn't given. And I chase after the next and the later and the better and the newer and the bigger because I'm not enjoying what I've been given. See, God gives me everything for my enjoyment. Let me enjoy it. Anything you need, God can provide. And what He does provide, He's provided for you to enjoy. So let's just let this sink into our hearts a little bit. Ask yourself some of these questions. Even right now, we're going to enter into a time of reflection. And I want to ask you to ask yourself these questions and kind of just listen to God as He's giving you some answers, as He's trying to whisper into your heart, deep into your conscience, as He's trying to whisper some insight into you. Just spend some time with you and God. Take that card out and jot down some thoughts on the backside. Maybe some of the stuff we've talked about today is going to inform a prayer request that you have that you're going to put down on the back of that card. Maybe you're ready to make a decision. You're saying, man, I'm trusting in money too much. I need to learn what it means to trust in Jesus. And maybe you've never made that commitment of saying, I'm giving my life to Jesus. I'm trusting Him with my life. And I'd love to walk through that process with you of helping you make that decision. And so you can even put a check mark on the front of your card for that. And on the back side of the card, just write down some thoughts of what is God speaking to you with regard to all this. And we're going to end with just a couple songs. And as we do that, I'm just going to ask that you would enter into this time of reflection and just let God speak into your heart a little bit. Let's pray together. Lord God, we recognize that we have not felt how richly you've provided because we have focused on all the things we don't have. We have allowed coveting to replace contentment. And yet we know that you provide for our enjoyment. So God, today, even in this place, would you whisper into our hearts just that awareness, that truth, that reality that we are rich because you've blessed us. And we don't need to trust in our money. We can trust in you because you're the source, you're the provider. And God, at the end of the day, would you bring us to that place where we could say, all we really need is you. If we have you, if we have our Savior, that'll be enough for us. Speak to us now, Father, even as we spend this moment in quiet reflection with you.